Hello and welcome to Connected episode 289. It's made possible this week by our sponsors, Pingdom, Squarespace, and Bowl and Branch. My name is Stephen Hackett, and I'm joined by Mr. Myke Hurley.
Happy to be here, taking a break from Animal Crossing.
Yeah, I'm glad you can make time for us. Thank you for putting that down for a minute. And Federico Vitici.
Happy to be here, taking a break from Pokemon.
See you, Stephen.
And writing. I've also been writing, but really, I was just playing Pokemon 10 minutes ago.
We're going to talk about your recent writing here in a minute, but we have to begin with follow-up. Follow-up. I don't even know when we talked about this, but at some point we did this thing where I had to find like the oldest pages on Apple's website. Do y'all remember this?
It's when we, for some reason, came across the trailers page.
That's right. Yes, and I emailed with Eddie Q.
Yeah.
Yes.
Who sent me the emoticon smiley face. That's a very surreal situation.
But it wasn't actually Eddie Q.
We don't know that.
Somebody at Apple did send you that. We can't.
But we all decided that it was Eddie Q.
We believe it to be, of course, but we can't say it's fact.
Anyways, Benjamin Mayo found this page that has a discount going. So if you buy any Power Mac G5
any
and a 23-inch cinema display, you'll save $500.
That's a pretty good deal.
This page is incredibly broken in like every conceivable way, but still exists on Apple.com. Like there's still some stuff here like that you can click to other things. Copyright 2004, this page.
Can I read y'all the navigation at the top? There's no images, but I can read you what the URLs are.
Oh, let's see if it's a bunch of question marks.
Yeah, but the links are still there.
Oh, yeah, the links work. Okay.
So it's apple.com, so the homepage, and then the store.
Okay.
And then iTunes, and then iTools.
What is iTools?
It was iCloud, but before that it was Mobile Me, but before that it was .Mac, it was iTools.
When you click that link, it directs to me.com and then to iCloud.com. It's like, what?
iCloud. Nice.
I'll have a link in the show notes. I wrote about iTools a couple years ago, so you can go check that out. And then we move on from there. We have QuickTime, support, and Mac OS X.
I clicked the iTunes one, and the marketing thing on the top of the iTunes page is very clever right now. It says iTunes is going places. Nice. What it means is podcasts, music, and Apple TV. I just thought that marketing line's good.
It means iTunes has been murdered behind the shed.
Yeah, I like that somebody wrote that, like people aren't really paying attention to it, but it's just a thing. I just love it.
Mm-hmm.
So now that I see I'm looking at the footer of the website, and I know that, so there's a number that you can call 1-800-MY-APPLE.
Yeah.
Which I believe is also I believe these numbers still exist.
It does.
Maybe. So this is totally unrelated, but now that I see this number, something that I've always sort of like wanted to do or wish that like somebody on YouTube did, and this is totally one of my weird things that I'm about to say, but like I would like somebody to go through a bunch of old like video game magazines or like really old stuff, find all these numbers and call all these numbers and see what happens. Like, do you get redirected to somebody else totally random? Like, what if you took a number from a video game magazine from, I don't know, 1985, right? And try to call it. And what if you try to do that for like 100 different support numbers?
I think I saw a thing online once that the Nintendo one is still up.
Really?
Yeah, I'm sure I saw somebody like tweeting about that, or I saw an article about it, that like the whatever 800 number for Nintendo to get like tips and suggestions on how to beat Mario, like you can still call that number. It goes to their support team now, I think, which is less.
Yeah. Anyway, sometimes I come across really old stuff, like I don't know, an old newspaper or an old magazine, and I always think, what if I call this number today and be like, hey, I found this number in a magazine from 35 years ago. Who are you?
Kyle in the chat room pointed out that you can actually still download the mailing coupon for this savings thing. It's like a PDF, and you've got the whole thing, and it looks, got a big peacock. It's great.
It's very Apple-y of the mid-2000s.
So how did you find out about the Apple Brilliant Savings Program? Select one response only. World Wide Web advertising, that's the answer. Print advertising, in-store materials, or word of mouth? I guess for us, it was World Wide Web advertising.
But for
probably.
our listeners, it's word of mouth.
Word of mouth. If Apple had not offered the brilliant savings promotion, which one would you most likely have done? Delayed purchasing a Mac? Not purchased an Apple Cinema HD display? Purchased a Windows-based PC? Purchased the Mac anyway?
Purchase the Mac
good.
anyways.
This is good.
If
like
I
this.
buy a Pro Display XDR, could I send this in and get some money back? Is it carry forward?
You should try it, you know?
It's a very expensive experiment.
You should buy it, send it in, and attach a note saying, hey, sorry for the 16-year delay. Just trying to get my coupon.
Trying to get my coupon.
I mean, I have the tower. It looks kind of the same. I sent this to a friend of mine, and he responded that I should try to hook up one of these displays to my Mac Pro. And so that's going to be my week next week.
Good.
I'll report back. Look, I can't go anywhere. I got to do something. Just hook up an old display. I don't have the 23-inch, though. I have the 17 Studio display, so mine's not as big as this, but it'll be funny anyways.
Well, that's bad. You got to get the 23-inch then. I will not accept anything smaller than 23-inch cinema display.
These are the displays that you like, right? You like the way these look with the acrylic and stuff?
They look really nice.
I think they do, too.
I think this look has come back around. You know, like this being an attractive design, it's like it's circled all the way back around, and we're back here again. You know?
Yeah, it looked real old the second they started shipping the aluminum ones.
Yeah, but now
and now this looks cool.
Now that like the older aluminium ones look old, right? Mm-hmm. And so like we've come all the way back around again.
I think Syracuse used one of these until like 3 months ago.
I think that was what he was using with his Mac Pro. Yeah, it was the cinema display. Yeah.
So I'll report back on if I can get mine working with my Mac Pro.
Did they have a blue one of these?
They had an LCD one before this that was called I'm looking through Mac Tracker, the Apple Studio Display 15-inch, and there was a blue one and a graphite one. I'll send you a picture of this. It was like super expensive. They didn't sell very many of them. But this was this like clear look. These all look basically the same. Federico, can you catch us up on your very interesting music journey? We got a couple pieces of feedback.
Sure. So a lot of people recommended or actually asked me, why didn't you go with this service called Roon? That's Roon. I tried Roon multiple times in the past. It's very popular among desktop users. If you have a PC or a Mac, they have a really good desktop app that scans your music library and presents you with a different visualization, I guess, of your artists. You can get like this beautiful layout with high resolution photography, and the app does some really interesting things in sort of surfacing additional information for each of your artists. It's really nice looking. The problem is that I don't plan on using Roon on the Mac. I don't like the idea of having a primarily desktop-oriented service. And my main issue with it is that when I tried Roon on the iPad, so first of all, you got to keep Roon running on the Mac. So that's fine. It's just an app that I can leave running in my dock. But when I tested it on the iPad and the iPhone, I couldn't get the high-resolution output to work when used with my Sony Walkman as an external USB DAC. So it looks really nice on the desktop, and I believe that it does what you're looking. It does support high resolution audio. If you have a Mac and if you have a USB DAC that you want to plug into your Mac, this is totally gonna work for you. In fact, I recommend it. It's an expensive service. It's not cheap, but if you're that type of person, lots of people who have like really large, for example, classical music collections or really large like collections of jazz albums, I know that it's very popular. Amongst those users, it's got integration with Tidal for high resolution streaming. It supports a bunch of like high performance network players. Really well done, but it's primarily for the desktop. Whereas I was looking for something that would support high resolution output on the iPad and potentially also on the iPhone, which is what Neutron does and Roon does not on iOS and iPadOS. So that's why I tried Roon, but I didn't choose it as my preferred solution. Speaking of Rune, speaking of Neutron, we did get at least one email saying that we were overly childish in our description of Neutron and other apps that we covered last week. And I just wanted to say a few things about this. Obviously, and I don't recall the exact words of the email. Obviously, we did not mean to offend anybody. I feel like we may have, gotten carried away a little bit.
We got a bit silly. We got a bit silly on it.
Got a bit silly on it. I think so. There's a few things that I want to say. I think we could all use some fun these days, and so that's probably where the spirit of the pent-up comedic aspect came from last week. But I also want to say something. The email that we got mentioned, though, it was basically something along the lines of it was, bad behavior on your part because these are indie developers and you were making fun of their user interfaces, and it's not fun because these are indies and we should all support each other. I understand the sentiment, right? I don't think you can find any other Apple website that loves indie developers more than Mac Stories, and I'm not bragging, it's just what it is. We work alongside indie developers every single day of the week, and we've been doing that for the past decade. So I don't really feel like I should be lectured about, what it means to support indie developers. But, and this is something that irks me to an extent, this idea that I should never, and by I mean me personally as well as other people like, you guys or on other shows, that we should never criticize indie developers because they're indies and because we should all support each other by default no matter what. I think that is not a good approach. I think, in fact, that only does a disservice to indie developers, and I'll explain why. If a user interface is ugly, I shouldn't have to sugarcoat the truth just because it comes from an indie developer. Because I think it's important to keep in mind that the market, the reason why indie developers can sell their software is because there's people that are not just part of the Mac Stories team that open the App Store and buy apps and use their money to purchase apps and subscriptions and in-app purchases and whatever. There's regular people who don't care about whether indie developers, they know each other, whether they're friends or not, whether they go to the same conferences or not. They absolutely have no idea. They see something, they decide whether it looks good enough, whether it's ugly or not, whether it has the functionalities that they're looking for, and then they choose with their wallets to spend money or not. So I think I would do a disservice to indie developers if I defended them no matter what, just because of their indie status. And I think I would do a disservice to my readers and my listeners if I never called out something as ugly or not useful enough just because it comes from an indie developer. I don't think we should be using this sort of this layer of, let's all love each other, let's all support each other, to forget about, a product's flaws or, the things, the features that are missing from a product. It's not a mindset that I think works well in 2020. I think maybe there was an argument to be made for this sort of approach 10 years ago, but I think the sad and, maybe harsh truth of the situation is that the App Store is a huge market, and regular people who don't read Mac Stories, who don't listen to this show, open the App Store and judge your app based on a few screenshots. And so last week's segment was very much based on the same premise. I'm just looking for something, I open the App Store, I search for what I'm looking for, and here are the results. And if I think something is ugly, I should be able to call it out as such. Now, maybe we got carried away by that, but the email that we got saying, and I'm not, basically the extent was, I'm really disappointed in you all because you made fun of indie developers. Well, we didn't make fun of indie developers, we made fun of ugly apps and ugly user interfaces. And I think there's this is something that I wanted to explain because as I said, I have been a supporter of indie developers for the past decade. But I also don't think just because somebody says I'm an indie, then I should be, I should be ashamed of myself for criticizing their product. Does it make sense?
Sure does. I agree with you.
So that was my update for you, Steven. Also some follow-up about something else that this is something that I did get wrong, and I apologize, but we got a lot of interesting technical details about this. So last week we talked about, I answered a question about whether it was going to be possible for the new native pointer in iPadOS 13.4 to be used for all kinds of games on the iPad. And I said, I don't see why not, because all the APIs are there. Now, thanks to friend of the show, Steve Troughton-Smith, I got a series of messages that explain why it is not possible with the current APIs to have all kinds of games on iPad with trackpad integration. And if Steve doesn't mind, I'm going to go through some of these messages that I saved because he was kind enough to send me an explanation a few days ago. Basically, what he's saying is that a game that uses the mouse for camera input, like a first-person shooter game or any other kind of first-person game, needs to be able to capture the cursor, of course. And capturing the cursor means this gets really complicated real fast. Basically, the X and Y movements of the cursor, they come in as relative movements, not as like absolute positioning of the cursor on screen. And you need to be able to capture that relative movement to be able to do like a first-person perspective, right? Otherwise, like if you move the cursor too far and you hit the edge of the screen, you hit the home indicator, for example, and it's totally not going to work because it's like going to snap your perspective, and it's not going to work in a first-person type of experience. Now, I am doing a terrible job at explaining this. It's a very technical motivation that why these games do not support the cursor. But basically, my understanding as a person who does not know what it means exactly because I'm not a game programmer, is that only certain types of games are possible like now, like things where you point and click, essentially, like a strategy game or like a puzzle game, like a point and click adventure game. But
it's like the view wouldn't be able to lock itself to the movement of the cursor. It can only really take what the result of the movement is, right, as opposed to like the consistent tracking.
Right.
Of it.
So like the constant relative tracking of the cursor, that's not possible. But if you just move the pointer around and click at a exact position on the screen, that's going to work. So I'm thinking like if you have a map for a strategy game, or if you have like a point and click adventure, you move the cursor and you click and it works. But if you're playing like I don't know, let's say that you want to play, what's a first person? Call of Duty on your iPad, the constant relative tracking of the cursor, so like if you move the mouse, then your head turns to the left, that's not supported right now because the API does not support that kind of relative tracking. That was my understanding of it. So that's too bad, really. Because I really think this should be possible. So maybe it's going to be part of the API enhancements at WWDC, maybe not. We'll see, but I think it should be possible. I was sad to hear that.
Yeah, they made a lot of changes in 6 months, right? Like cursor support went a long way in a short period of time. There's nothing to say it can't continue to keep moving forward.
Yeah, so that was follow-up, Steven. We're all done here.
Thank you for providing follow-up this week. And I guess really thanks to Steve Troughton-Smith.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, buddy. This episode of Connected is brought to you by Pingdom from SolarWinds. Today's internet users, everyone expects fast web experiences. No matter how good your content may be or how effective your marketing is, people are just going to bounce. They're going to leave your website if it's loading too slowly. With real user monitoring from Pingdom, you can discover how website performance issues affect your visitors' experiences so you can take action before your business is impacted. How your visitors experience your website often differs depending on the browser, device, and platform they're using. So you want to identify how visitors are experiencing your site so you can make informed optimizations and deliver a great performance to those who matter most. Real user monitoring is an event-based solution, so it's built to scale, meaning you can monitor millions of paid views without compromising your historical data or breaking the bank in the process. Get live visitor insights today with real user monitoring from Pingdom. Go to pingdom.com/relayfm right now for a 14-day free trial with no credit card required. And when you sign up, use the code CONNECTED at checkout to get an awesome 30% off your first invoice. Our thanks to Pingdom from SolarWinds for the support of this show and Relay FM.
So Federico, as part of your coverage over on Mac Stories last week of the 10th anniversary of the iPad shipping to customers, you wrote an article that we referenced at the end of the episode last week about your modular iPad, so the many ways in which you use your iPad. I refer to these as teaching hacks, personally, because a lot of these things are weird, right? Like in good ways. Like we all know, everyone listens to this show know all about hashtag kickstands. You're big on the kickstand mania. I kind of wanted to just touch on a few areas from this, having read over the article, because there's a couple of things that mirror with my setup and things that I wanted to query you on. I think the first is like the iVisor. So like you, I am a big fan still of the Moshi iVisor, which is the matte screen protector that we both have on our iPads. But I did want to note that, so when I got my new iPad and set it up, did recognize how much more vivid and bright the screen is without it, but I do still prefer it with the screen protector on, if that makes sense. Like I prefer the matte look because I don't like to have the reflections and it looks nicer, but the screen is like quote unquote better without it, right?
Yeah, it's you do get some image quality loss, but I think it's I thought that the Paperlike was doing worse in this regard.
Oh, Paperlike is definitely worse.
The quality loss with the iVisor is not as bad as the Paperlike. I do see, of course, like when I use an iPad without the screen protector, I do see the screen is much brighter and like the colors are a bit more vivid. But I think it's a good compromise. Like if I had to choose, like, do you want to use your iPad without a screen protector or the Paperlike? Then I would have said, nah, I'm just going to use the iPad without the screen protector. But between the iPad sort of like naked with no protector and the Moshi iVisor, I think, well, if I'm going to get a matte display, I think the image quality loss is not that bad. So it's a compromise that I'm willing to accept. But yes, I agree with you. Like when you take it off, you can see that it's brighter and the colors are like, they just pop more.
Yeah, it's just I've been using it for long enough that when I had the new screen, it was like, wow, okay, look at you. Right, like it was just like a thing that was different. You also talk a lot about your external display.
Okay.
And I wondered, how often do you actually use the external display? Like on a daily basis, a weekly basis, how much are you using your LG display with your iPad?
Oh, every day. Yeah.
Like for most of the time that you're using your iPad or no?
When I'm working, especially since the trackpad came out, the trackpad support came out. When I'm working on the iPad, I only work with the external display now.
Okay. And I assume that's changed a lot since the trackpad support, right? Because it was not a great solution.
No, it used to be like
before.
every once in a while I would work with the external display, but now it's like it's the new default, and every once in a while I work with just the iPad. So it's really the opposite of what it used to be.
And you showed that you use the clear look stand like I do. Why do you choose to use the LG display instead of just using it in the clear look stand all the time?
Sometimes I cannot work in the bedroom because maybe Sylvia is resting, or I just wanna like a change of scenery, or I gotta keep an eye on the dogs or whatever. And in that case, I use the stand because if I'm working at the kitchen table, I want it to be higher, with the stand.
Yeah, but you find the larger screen? Is that why you would why you would use the LG though? Like, is that why you would prefer to use that?
Yeah, also because like if I'm like in the bedroom, I can concentrate a little more. It's easier for me to sort of isolate myself. With the screen is also bigger and it's just better for my eyesight. in general. Yeah.
Cursor support is more than we expected. That it really exploded. Like from when it was introduced to what we have now, it's a 6-month gap. It's so much more than we expected, and like wow, like, blown away. Do you think that's going to happen for external monitors? Like, do you think there's going to be expanded support? Like, is that really going to happen?
So. I think it's going to happen because all the PCs are in place at this point. If you consider, like, Apple is the sort of company that likes to introduce new features and this is something that I actually read about in the story. They like to introduce new software features based on other like existing features that they shipped before. It's sort of like this iterative process of like an API allows developers to ship a new feature, and that feature is actually going to be at the foundation of another one next year. So if you look, for example, at the what we have now, we have this pointer integration. So you have a system-wide pointer that you can use to interact with elements, with UI elements, any UI element without touching the screen. And then we have the UI scene API, which is the technology at the foundation of multi-window on iPad. So it used to be that before iPadOS, apps could only offer a single window. But now a developer can actually supports multiple scenes, and each scene can be contained within its own window. So the theory would be that for Apple to support external displays, they would allow the user to say, okay, take one window and put it on an external display. And the developer would have the controls to say, well, this scene, this window, still running on the iPad, so offers these kinds of controls. This different scene, so you have that separation right between scenes. This different scene is actually running on an external display, which means I can do things, I can support different interactions because I know a pointer is going to be used. And now you have a pointer that you can move across, between the iPad and an external display. So you have all these technological pieces that can be at the foundation of that functionality. And I really think it's going to happen because I would have said, if you asked me before 13.4, I would have said, yeah, maybe in the future, maybe in a couple of years, the iPad is going to properly support external displays. But now I think we've seen, besides the things that I've been writing about, we've seen all kinds of setups. If you visit Reddit, the iPad community, or if there's always, that popular article of somebody using the iPad in some interesting ways. I think a lot of iPad Pro users have this kind of setup now, and I think Apple knows, that they're looking at what the community is doing. They pay attention, and considering that all the, now that we have multi-window, it's in there, it's in place, and now we have the system-wide pointer, I think I wouldn't be surprised if it happens this year rather than 2021 or 2022. I think the timeline for that suddenly accelerated a lot because of the pointer. So I think it's going to happen. I'm very optimistic about it.
Yeah, see, I wonder about this feature. Like, I would like it myself because I just always want more. But I just think that, I would be intrigued to see, if Apple do go down this route, how they sell it to people, as the reason you would want to do it, Because I think it's maybe a more complicated thing to cohesively explain than trackpad, cursor support. That is just well, everyone wants that. It's a much easier, oh, you like trackpads, you're used to trackpads, well then just go ahead and use one. Where an external monitor is, I think, a little bit, it needs a more kind of cohesive reason to exist for a lot of people, and I would be intrigued to see how they would explain it in a way that would make people excited who don't already know why it would be good for them,
Well, I feel like in that case, the simplest explanation is just, it's going to be what it is. If you have an iPad, you can work on the go. When you arrive at home, you can dock it in and you can still use it with a trackpad, or you can touch the screen and you can put stuff on an external display. I don't think they need to have any fancy narrative for, just like they did the pointer, right? And of course, it's optimized for the iPad, and it's different in a bunch of ways from the Mac. But at the end of the day, it's still a pointer. You can still control stuff. They did reinvent some of the interactions for the pointer, but it's still a pointer.
The trackpad came with it's not here yet, but like a whiz-bang new product, right? So like if you hadn't been able to conceive of why you would want it, look at this keyboard. Look how amazing it looks. And I would love to see Apple debut a new product alongside that, right? Like, we now have a display that doesn't cost $6,000, and we also have a solution, right, to plug it in really easily. Like I would love that. I don't know if they would do it, but I hope that they would. Like an Apple made docking solution. It's like something simple, not something wild, right? But just like this mythical dock that's been USB-C, a Thunderbolt dock that's been like around forever. Like I would love them to do something like that to help cohesively tell the story for other people, and also because if Apple did do this, we would all want that anyway, right? Like if they were like, we've done this, it'd be like, okay, I now want a monitor that looks like my iPad display, that is can easily support my iPad display in full resolution, and so I don't have to have these like trail of cables all over the place.
The only potential issue for not supporting external displays this year, I think the multitasking UI on iPad needs to change to support that sort of a additional layer of window management.
Definitely.
And I don't know if we're going to see multitasking changes on iPad this year. So that's one of the potential issues with, let's wait until next year before we roll out support for external displays. Because I don't think the current system, the current UI is going to scale to that type of interaction.
Has your shift to using your iPad in a more desktop-like environment, has that made you reconsider the size iPad you have? You've got the 12.9, but would you consider a smaller one if your primary use now is this?
I've seen that article on the Sweet Setup about, now that we have trackpads, let's all... No, it's a perspective that I get.
No, it's good. I just love the way you say, I've seen these people and their iPads.
I mentioned this because our Ryan was like, hey, this article from the Sweet Setup is making me reconsider the 11-inch iPad Pro now that I can use a trackpad. And I strongly disagree with that notion because I always want the biggest iPad possible. Like, yes, I know that I'm going to have a big UI and a big screen on an external monitor, but that's the whole point of my setup, is that when I just take the iPad and leave, it's still big enough for me to work in a comfortable way. Because the basic truth of the matter does not change. I don't want to be stuck at a desk forever. I just want to have the option. And that's why the article is called modular, because it supports different modes and has this sort of modularity built in. Like, you add a display, sure. You add a keyboard, sure. But at its core, it's still an iPad. And because I want to make sure that I can still use it as an iPad, for me, that means having the biggest iPad possible, because I need to see, my big windows and my big text, because I'm an old person now and my eyesight is bad.
And you love your big windows.
I love my big windows, right? I get the sentiment. I know that a bunch of people will now follow that advice, but it does not apply to me.
I still think that's the best iPad, the 11, for most people. It still is the best iPad for most people. I just think I prefer to use on a daily basis the 12.9, but you got to have a reason, I think, to that you've got to know. I always say this to people. I don't know if you agree, Federico, but like, if you want the big one. If you don't know you want the big one, then get the small one.
Okay.
It's good advice.
I think it's pretty simple, because like, they're not that different in size anymore, but they feel very different.
If you're asking whether you should get the 12.9, that it means you should buy the 11.
Hey, that's good. I like that. That's even better than the way I say it. I might steal that. And plus, these things might get even heavier when we start putting these keyboards on them, right? Am I right? Thanks, Amazon. That's the thing, isn't it? This is what I heard now?
Yeah, so let me talk through this. So Amazon has the Magic Keyboard for the iPad Pro available for pre-order. Yeah, who knows how or why that's possible. Apparently, it's been up for several days, and a bunch of people just noticed it last night. And Federico, you pointed out that these product pages had the weight for the new keyboards. There's a lot of questions in this, but the pages state for the 11-inch, 1.81 pounds or 822 grams, and then 2.41 pounds or 1,093 grams for the 12.9-inch model. It is unknown if that includes the weight of the iPad. It includes the weight of the box. Like, everyone has their own.
It definitely doesn't include the weight of the iPad. That is a wild theory.
I
right?
don't think it does until I actually did the math. And if you include the iPad, then it's about the same step up in weight we saw from the old smart keyboards to the current Folio. It's like, who knows?
It could be.
Who knows?
Myke, actually.
Could be.
That doesn't make any sense to me, though. Like, why? It's more likely to include, I mean, Amazon is a logistics company. Like, what they have is the weight of the keyboard in a box.
Maybe it just
sure.
includes
And
the box.
in that case, it's hard to nail down what these would weigh unless you had those boxes on hand. And anyways, the exact numbers aren't important. I was either going to read an hour of the news or I was going to spend an hour like doing math about grams. It's like, I'm going to do math about grams to talk about iPad keyboard cases. So part of it is a fun distraction. But there's no doubt that these things are going to be heavier. And what's so interesting to me is Apple has not told anyone what the weights are, like including press who have asked, like no word. Whether it's, these numbers that are in this article that I wrote or some other numbers, I think it's safe to say it's going to increase. And I just wonder, especially on the 12.9-inch model, like you're going to be in MacBook Pro territory real quick with the weight. And I don't think that's a big deal, but I just think it's really interesting that we just don't know for something that's going to be coming out, in 3 to 6 weeks.
If I was going to put my money on the table, I would say that these keyboards will weigh very close to the weight of their respective iPads.
So you would effectively be doubling.
Yeah.
And the iPads now, they those weights are, I thought I wrote it in the article, maybe I didn't. Those weights are on the website though, and it's doubling it seems fair to me. I think when you go over that line, it's like, whoa,
yeah,
what are y'all doing?
So like the 12.9 is 641 grams.
Okay.
And the 11-inch is 471 grams. I think it'll be close.
I think a lot of people, and this is being said in the chat room, and it goes to your point earlier about like a docking station, there are going to be, I think, a lot of people that maybe just use this on their desk because of the way, if it does work the way that video shows and we have like a 2-second clip, but like if it really stays in place when you take the iPad off of it, then like, yeah, like you could totally see how it's just on your desk. And then when you go somewhere, you just slip it in your bag and leave the keyboard behind. So who knows? It's got to have some amount of weight. So that's all possible. But it was just like an interesting detail that Amazon shared. It's like, we don't really know what it means, but this is what it could mean. It's a fun way to spend an evening.
I think what we know, like what this has shown us, is what we already knew, which is these things are heavy.
Yes.
And they're heavier than the smart keyboards.
Yeah.
Which, we knew that, but now, well, we assumed it, right? Because physics and stuff, but, we now have an idea that it is going to be that way. But I just think, I think this thing will be heavy. I think it has to be heavy to allow for the balance, right? Because you don't want this whole thing to topple over on its back every time you touch the screen. And I don't think it's a problem because it will be about the weight of like a laptop at that point, which I think is perfectly fine because that's its use case, You use it like you would use a laptop. And at that point, it doesn't matter that it's the weight of a laptop. And also in the same vein of like, if you are able to do what Apple have shown, which is that you can just pick this thing up, it can't weigh a ton less than the thing that it's detaching from, because otherwise the force that you apply to the iPad, you just pick it up every time. Mm-hmm. So it has to have some heft to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. So we'll know soon enough, I guess, right? Like it's going to be coming in May at some point.
May 30th. It's coming at the end of the month.
My question here is just how much will these things be back-ordered when they eventually come out? And
it's going to be a nightmare.
Mm-hmm. And how long will I have to wait before I get from the Italian Apple Store a Magic Keyboard in the US English layout? Because that's what I got to do.
Like 2024. It's going to be a long time.
I'm going to get it next year for sure.
These things are going to be difficult. These things are going to be difficult, right? Like, my hope would be that my hope would be that they decided to just go for May so it wouldn't be, right? So like that will be like pretty available. But I don't think that's the case. I think that this is going to be a pretty constrained product.
Yep. John Voorhees,
like every other product before it.
John Voorhees is going to be shipping you one. Is what's going to happen.
Well, he cannot leave the house, so I don't want to.
Well, he drove through a snowstorm once before, right? Like the man will go to wild lengths here.
But also, I would feel really bad about tasking John with leaving the house right now just to ship me a Magic Keyboard. But I mean, it's.
So we've learned the limit. So pandemic, no. Blizzard, yes.
Blizzard's fine. The man lives in Chicago. He's used to it.
Okay.
Pandemic, though, it's a hard one. I gotta think about it.
It's a hard compare. It's a tough compare for you, that one.
Probably global pandemic is where I draw the line, but I'm not totally sure at this point.
It's a good place to draw a line. Like, it's good to have lines drawn.
I mean, what's more extreme? If this isn't it, where is the line?
Well, maybe next month the situation is gonna be better, and you can put on a mask, bunch of gloves, and protective gear.
Yeah,
and go
bunch
to
of gloves.
Bunch of gloves.
Yeah, you want
Not
multiple gloves, and go to the UPS store for me. But no, I'm just gonna I'm just gonna order from the Italian Apple store. And worst case scenario, I'm going to order 2, one with the Italian layout, which I guess is going to be, the stock for that in Italy is going to be easier to manage.
Sure.
And then I will just wait for the US English one, because I know that ordering like international layouts from the Italian Apple store always has a longer shipping time. So it's fine. I'll probably order 2 of them and draw the line at global pandemic in regards to John Voorhees.
I have a funny, it's not like haha, but like a weird little thing that I realized when I got my new iPad, that I have been using my iPad's keyboard in the American keyboard layout for I don't know how long, because I realized when I set up my new iPad, I was like, oh, it's the actual return key. Like the one that I'm used to. And I have no idea how long I had been using it otherwise or why, but that's the thing that's happened to me. So now my keyboard is like a little bit different than it was before, and it's very confusing and refreshing at the same time. It's very strange.
Yeah. It's one of
and I assume there must have been some reason, some like accessory or something, right, that like made me do it. And then, because I remember the smart keyboard, I had it in American layout because it was all you could get. And I bet I set it then, like when I got the original smart keyboard, and like how many ever iPads ago that was. And I set it up and then just left it and then just ignored it because I so infrequently use the software keyboard that I wouldn't even notice it anyway. So.
Yeah, this is one of the only instances where I have to agree with Casey List's, American exceptionalism angle. It is really a great layout, the US English one.
The British English layout's great, and we have the extra size in that return key, big chunky return key. I love my big return key.
Yeah, but I do prefer the American one. In this case, I do prefer the American one.
Have you used the British layout?
I have, and I believe that in addition to the return key, there was also another difference for me. Why don't we do the ad break, and I'm gonna confirm real quick, because I believe that I had an opinion, but I have forgotten that opinion. I just need to.
One of the great things about the British layout is we have like just a key that you press to get the pound symbol, the hashtag symbol. We don't have to do some weird thing to the number 3.
Let me remember my opinion, and I will confirm it to you again.
Great.
This episode of Connected is brought to you by Squarespace. Make your next move with Squarespace. It lets you easily create a website for your next idea with a unique domain name, award-winning templates, and more. So think about that project you've been wanting to start, and now may be a really good time to do that. Think about all the components you may need. You may need a blog or a podcast or a gallery, an online store. Squarespace is the all-in-one platform that lets you do all of that stuff all under one roof. And you don't have to become some sort of server admin, installing stuff or worrying about patches. Squarespace has all that covered. They have award-winning 24/7 customer support if you need any help. They let you quickly and easily grab a unique domain name, and all of those award-winning templates are beautifully designed for you to show off your great ideas. One of the nice features about Squarespace, I just helped somebody with, is a kind of an alert window. You know, like say that you are closed temporarily or you have some sort of special deal running. So doing that sort of like, hey, I'm going to slide in from the bottom with some text, that can be kind of janky on other platforms. And in Squarespace, it was just super easy to do, and you can customize the look of it to match, all really easy. Squarespace plans start at just $12 a month, but you can start a trial with no credit card required by going to squarespace.com/connected. When you decide to sign up, use the offer code CONNECTED to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain and to show your support for the show. Once again, that's squarespace.com/connected and the code CONNECTED to get 10% off your first purchase. We thank Squarespace for their support of this show and all of Relay FM. Squarespace, make your next move, make your next website.
So I believe I was of the opinion that the US English keyboard layout was preferable, personally speaking, to the UK one, because due to the smaller shape of the return key, the US layout has a / key next to the square brackets, which I found useful for writing code on my iPad, for like escaping things in JavaScript. So that's why. There's a / and a pipe character next to the square brackets and curly brackets on the right side of the keyboard.
Right, but there's a / key on the left-hand side. Well, I guess it depends on the keyboard. All right, fine.
That was why. And I thought, especially with like
Fine.
curly brackets and square brackets, it was handy to have the / in there.
I mean, on a lot of keyboards, though, there's a / on the left-hand side next to the left shift, and the left shift is smaller. I don't know how Apple's software keyboard does it off the top of my head. But there is a / key.
I know that there
British
is one,
keyboards.
but I just preferred I just liked it better. Like, it's one of the few things that I like better like about America.
I don't like this.
That's certainly a lot to think about. Let's move on, though. _David Smith has a new app called WatchSmith. Federico, do you want to explain what this app does?
Sure. You can watch David. It's a live stream app. It's called WatchSmith. It's a live cam. It's called...
Like how you get those animal zoo cams?
Yeah.
It's like, if you want to watch how developers work in the wild.
It's like, oh, he's eating. Oh, so cute. He's sleeping under the tree.
It's literally in the name. You watch Smith.
Oh, he's got 2 Apple Watches on and he's walking around in circles.
Yeah, and especially during this global pandemic time, we could all use, tune in and watch Smith do his things.
You feel like you're working with him.
It really brings you
nice.
closer to the, to the life of an indie developer.
Hey, you guys know what the most popular webcam is for zoos right now? The Pandademic camera.
Oh my God.
Get out of here.
So we have another sponsor for this episode. Could probably wrap it up here. My thanks go to, let's see, Ball and Branch. Thank you. I'm afraid Steven ruined the show.
The chat room is very upset with me.
Everyone's upset with you.
You gotta understand, Steven. He's a father and he feels compelled to share this.
Yeah.
Oh, God. I actually feel like not good now.
Yeah, the humor is just so overwhelming to you.
Oh my God.
All right, WatchSmith. Tell us about this magic.
I believe this used to be called, when David was talking about this idea with his close friends, Project Geneva. He also mentioned that on podcasts. So the idea behind WatchSmith, which is the official name, is now out on the App Store, is it's a utility that lets you design your own Apple Watch complications. So...
Yeah.
You can choose from different types of complications. I believe 37 types of complications are supported across different watch faces. So not all watch faces are supported at the moment, but there's a really great selection of options, like for the infograph and the infograph modular, the what's it called, the big one, the X-ray watch face. Like there's some choice in there, and you can create your own custom complications, choosing from different types of complications. So like the smaller circular ones, or the ones that go like in an angle of the display, the big for example, in the infograph modular face, you can create the big middle one. And what you can do, so this is like a design in a way, it's like a design app in that you can go in there and choose your watch face and choose your complication and design it yourself. So you choose the type of complication, you choose the data source. Like, do you want this to be a date complication? Or do you want this to be a weather complication? Or should it be about your activity or about your calendar? And then you can choose the font, and then you can choose the style, and then you can choose the color. So you actually do create your own custom complications, choosing from a set of supported types, choosing from a set of data sources. You put it all together, you save it, then you go to the watch app, the Apple Watch app to customize your watch, and you choose your watch face and you select WatchSmith, and there you go. You have your custom complication installed. It is really incredible, I think, what David has been able to do here. But in addition to the customization of the whole thing, like, again, multiple fonts, multiple colors, multiple data sources, multiple layouts, the really impressive part is that WatchSmith also supports scheduling complications for different times of the day. So this is an API that I believe Apple launched a couple of years ago. And it used to be limited to like cards in the Siri watch face, like you could show different cards at different times of the day. Then last year, I think developer Aaron Pierce was first to do this sort of feature with Home Run, which is a HomeKit utility for the watch that lets you show different HomeKit complications at different times of the day. The idea being that maybe in the morning you want to turn on your coffee, your espresso machine, and maybe in the evening you want to have a button to turn off your lights. This is a similar idea, but done in a much more extensive way in WatchSmith. You can schedule up to how many hours in a day? 24? Yeah, 24. So I guess you can schedule 24 complications in WatchSmith. Each can take up to an entire hour block. There's an analog clock UI that actually lets you see, like, from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. show this complication. At 2 p.m. until 6 p.m. automatically cycle to this other complication. And they can actually manage all the complications that you want to see appear on your watch face automatically without you having to change them at different times of the day. It is very clever. I don't know, how do you guys feel about it? I'm very impressed by what David did here.
So I think that, can I just talk about this as like a watch fan? Because this is what I like about this application. So I've been talking with Dave for a while about this because I wanted to give my input on, like, here are some things that I want. Because the thing that frustrates me about Apple's watch faces is like that I can't customize them the way that I want to for visual reasons, right? I don't necessarily want all of the computer stuff my watch can do. Like, I don't really want my calendar on my watch face. Neither do I want my to-do app there anymore. I just don't want that sort of stuff anymore on my watch, right? I will go into the apps or get notifications if I'm wearing the watch for this stuff. But what I do want more of is smart things that my watch can do because it's connected to the internet. And this is what WatchSmith allows me to have. So when I'm using WatchSmith, I use one of the watch faces. I either use California, or there's another one that I don't remember the name of, but it's like one of the more simple ones, and it has 2 spots, or Meridian, I think it's called, right? It has like 3 spots on it or something. But the ones that I like to have the day of the week indicator, where it's just like the abbreviations for each day in a little circle, and it just points to which one it is. I just think it's really pretty. Plus, I like that you can choose not only the font, but what the little indicator looks like the little hand, which points. You can choose what you want it to look like, which I like because it's the visual stuff that I want. But I also I really like the moon phase ones, right? So you can choose. I want to get the actual name of it because I asked specifically for this one, and I don't want to get the name wrong. It is called Classic Moon Phase. So this is the idea of, like, through a day, you can see the moon rise and go down again. Like, you see this sort of stuff a lot on like traditional watches. And I wanted that on the Apple Watch, and I couldn't find any way to get it. But they've made it and put it in this app. And I think it's great that I can have these more traditional watch elements on my Apple Watch for visual stuff, as well as being able to have smarter things like much nicer complication designs for temperature things, or to be able to have a battery indicator if I want, which is a number, but I can choose the color and the font for it. Like, I like that I can do that because it's enabling me to do something which I like, which is to choose a watch, right? When I'm choosing real watches that fit my design tastes, right? But then can also be changed like a computer watch should be able to be changed. Like, it allows for more configuration, but without sacrificing design. Like, the app itself, as Federico was alluding to, it gets complicated because there's lots of options. But to get the true personalization, that's what you want, right? Like, I want to be able to choose the font and the color and what the actual hand looks like itself, so I can get it to look exactly the way that I want. One other thing that Dave does with this app, which must have been incredibly difficult to do, but I love it because it's something I hate about the Apple Watch, is the complications adjust so you can still see them if the hand is over them.
Yeah. How?
So he moves the UI around with incredibly complicated math and knowing the way that the design of the watch works, right? Like, that's the only way you can make this work, which is what Dave did. Because I hate that the Apple Watch, the hands, cover the complications. This shouldn't happen. That is a thing that happens on real watches because it's physical. Mm-hmm. There are things that Apple does sometimes, which I hate about the Apple Watch design, where they mirror the physical into the digital world when that is not necessary, right? And so I love that Dave did this because that's the way that all complications should work. So what I like about this app, which is different to what most people like about this app, I like that it bridges traditional watches and the Apple Watch. So when I'm wearing the Apple Watch, I can have it look more like a watch, which is what I want. And then, but you can go into many realms and have your calendar there in different ways and all that kind of stuff. And if you're going to do that, I think that there should be an ability, which WatchSmith allows, to allow you to customize it very heavily because you are wearing it on your wrist. Like, I think that this app really, for me, only shows more the fact that Apple has not done enough with customization of the Apple Watch, because then you do start running into things that I find frustrating, where it's like, I want to use this watch face now, but I can only use this type of complication, right? And I can't have multiple complications of the same type on this watch face. It's like, why? Mm-hmm. Why can't I have two of these little circle ones on there? Oh no, because you have to have this circle one and this big circle one. It's like, why, Apple? Why? Like, why is it this way? Like, these are the things that like continue to be frustrating to me, and I hope that we see more. But I think that Dave has done a great job. It is also worth noting that _David Smith is a close personal friend of all of ours, but this is a very, very good application. Mm-hmm. So that's what I wanted to say.
I mean, in the past, if you wanted to mimic this, you could have multiple watch faces set up, right? So if you wanted one with complications for work, like your meetings and your to-do list, and then when you got home, you just wanted, sunset time and the weather, you could do that, but then you were juggling watch faces. And what's great about this is that it means that your watch face can change over the course of a day without you having to fiddle with it or remember. And I mean, I said this in my blog post, and I really mean it. I don't think there's anyone outside of Apple who understands watchOS development as much as Underscore. Like, he is pushing this thing way further than most developers are. And I think Apple should pay attention to that. And I'm not saying I want my friend's app to be Sherlocked, but boy, this stuff should be in the system by this point. I mean, the watch is coming up on 5 years old. It's like, we're still stuck with so many of the original assumptions that Apple made about it, and it feels stagnant in a lot of areas because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I also want to call out some of the details that I really love about WatchSmith. By far, my favorite feature is the support for multiple time zones, which is part of the subscription model that we should also mention. Like, if you want to, you can download WatchSmith for free, but some of the complications, because they're based on data sources that require like a server component that require WatchSmith.
Dark sky.
Right. The weather is part of that. Time zones are also part of that. the app, you can subscribe to get all the complication types at $2 a month, so $1.99 a month or $19.99 a year. Right now I'm subscribed monthly, but I'm probably going to switch to annually at some point. And I did subscribe because of the time zone support. So the idea would be that I can check on multiple time zones at once in the WatchSmith app. But the really impressive part is that I can see multiple time zones at a glance in a complication. So with the I believe it's called the infograph modular, this one. Yeah, the infograph modular. The big complication in the middle of the screen is like a timeline. So I put a timeline that shows me like different time zones with their abbreviations. So, for example, New York City, Rome, Chicago, and Cupertino are the ones that I should add London because of Myke as well.
Hello.
Yes.
I have Rome in all of my things because of you, so I think it's only
I will
fair.
add London as well. So now I see like this horizontal timeline of different time zones around the world, which is really, really excellent. But I'm also considering the weather, and I see by following the new WatchSmith app account on Twitter, I see that David has been tweeting about a new weather complication style that's like a boxy graph style, which I really like. So I guess that about sums up my feelings on this. It's gonna be so much fun to play around, especially if you're like somebody like me who loves to tweak things and play around with different settings. Like, this is heaven for you because you can choose literally everything about the app. And I'm gonna be spending so much time like changing fonts and colors and choosing different settings. I saw somewhere, again on Twitter, in a reply to somebody else, that David suggested supporting any arbitrary source of JSON data. So like a URL that points you to some data in the JSON format. And I'm like, my brain is already thinking about all the different things that I could do with like Zapier and like, you know, exposing like custom data over a URL and turning that into a complication in WatchSmith. That would be incredible. So
if I'm going to wear a computer,
exactly,
I want it to be very customizable. That's what I want. Because if it's never going to look good as watches that I could choose for the same amount of money. And the reason for that is not that the Apple Watch is ugly, is that there are lots and lots and lots of decisions that you can make about a watch that you want. And Apple sells you one style, right? You can get it in different finishes, but it's one physical style, which might not necessarily be the style you would choose given the same amount of money to go and buy a watch. So if I'm going to wear this one design, I want it to be the best that a computer watch can be, which is let me choose everything, right? And I think this is what David is starting to allow with this application. It's very impressive.
We have some iOS 14 home screen rumors. iOS 14 still floating about there somewhere. So this is on 9to5Mac, and it comes from a couple of different sources. But we have some home screen appearance stuff, some collection stuff. Myke, do you want to walk us through this?
Yeah, so there's been a couple of things going on here. 9to5Mac are reporting on this. It came from a third-party source, a Twitter user, goes by the name DongleBookPro, which I appreciate, but they said that it corroborates information that they had found out. So breaking down the current existing wallpaper types into collections. So one called Classic Stripes, one called Earth and Moon, and one called Flowers. These are the ones that Apple already make. And, you might imagine that you would want to do that because Apple is potentially looking at third-party packs, if you remember that rumor from previously. So if you were to install, like, other sources for wallpapers, you might want to have collections already built in so they can plug into that area. Apple would also look like that they are going to be expanding to different appearance options so that you could choose just basic colors or basic dynamic wallpapers or smart gradients as an option for the home screen. So you would have to be able to choose just basic colors or I like the idea of a gradient. And smart gradient, I'm sure, would mean would easily move between light and dark mode. That's what I expect that's doing, right? Did that make sense to you guys?
I guess so, yeah.
right? Like, I don't know what else would be smart about a gradient. Like, I don't know how smart you can make them. The report goes on to say, we can say that Apple is working to provide real widgets on the iPhone and iPad home screen for the first time. Instead of pinned widgets like on iPad OS 13, the new widgets on iOS 14 could be moved around just like any app icon. So the idea of widgets on the home screen like they are on Android that we've thought about and spoke about and wanted for a long time seems like it may actually be coming to iOS 14, but like any good home screen, like any good iOS rumor, the report does go on to say, but of course this could be scrapped at any time. I saw a concept floating around by Parker Ortolani showing what this could look like. And I like the way this looked. It's kind of like a blending between. Basically, what Parker has created is a selection of widget designs based on existing widgets that look like they belong on an iPhone home screen because they're basically 2 or 3 or 4 app icons in size, just smushed together, which I think this kind of design would work well. This did make me think, I don't know about you guys, I feel like I'm seeing a lot of concepts, more concepts than ever these days.
It's that time of the year, and
no, just in general. I mean, maybe UI designers are at home. They got a bit of extra time on their hands. People are making concepts.
There's that, and I think it's also much easier than before because we have so many new design tools to actually make a credible replica of an iOS device.
But I like the idea of widgets. Right? I done well, done tastefully. This could be really nice.
They should do it. They should do it. They should allow for multiple widget sizes. I believe we've seen this in the Parker's mockups. By the way, are really good. It's not the first time that I've seen Parker's name in 9to5Mac lately. They should support multiple widget sizes, so like a compact layout, an expanded layout. They should also do, I'm gonna throw my ideas out there. They should also support live icons, similar to the calendar. Is the clock icon by Apple also a live icon? Yeah, so
it is.
Yeah, it even has the second sound, like so you can watch seconds ticking.
Live icons could be the next customizable icons. So like, another nice new thing for developers to support. And I'm going to go right ahead and say it. They should do live shortcuts on the home screen. So imagine a shortcut that is not just a static icon, maybe with a custom glyph that you bought from Mac Stories, but also like an actual live tile that shows you progress, maybe shows you some kind of UI, some kind of confirmation message of sorts. Like imagine instead of just like tapping an icon to open the Shortcuts app that runs the shortcut for you, imagine having some kind of like staying on the home screen, first of all, not having to launch the Shortcuts app when you run a shortcut, but also to have some kind of visual confirmation of the shortcut in there. And then of course, if the shortcut requires interaction, like typing some text or choosing from a list, maybe it could show you those elements on the home screen, or maybe it could just take you back to the Shortcuts app, and that would be fine. But for most shortcuts, I would love the ability to run them as live icons, live tiles, call them whatever, from the home screen right there without launching shortcuts, with some kind of visual aspect to them.
That would be really good. I would like that too. Just to make things feel a bit more alive. Like, not everything needs to be a widget, right?
No.
Like, having these live icons, that might be enough for a lot of things. Not everything needs a widget.
Let's get weird is my message to Apple. Let's do weird things. Do new things. Whatever. It's 2020. There's a global pandemic going on. Get weird, because we could all use it.
Is this your platform for 2020? Let's get weird?
This is my platform. Let's get weird.
Okay.
Yes.
It's good.
I think this all started with kickstands.
Honestly, can you disagree with my approach? Like,
no.
See? We
Nope.
could all...
Federico, I use my iPad with a plugged-in RGB split keyboard. I'm on board with getting weird, baby.
That sounds lovely. I love it. Yes. Can you say that again? Can you say those words again?
I use my iPad in a stand with a keyboard which needs 2 USB-C cables plugged into a splitter, which has RGB cycling lights with the keyboard physically split in half.
Did you hear that, Steven? Can you do that stuff with your Macintoshes? I bet you can't.
Macintoshes. If they add widgets to the home screen, I totally think they should. Would they get rid of the row of widgets in the Today view? Would these kind of become one thing, you think? Or would they keep, like, you could put widgets you need on the home screen, like secondary widgets still over there on the side?
There could be a page on the side, but I think the system to design and create widgets, the old one should be scrapped and actually release a new framework.
I think I would want them in both places personally.
Same, but I think the technology the developers use to make them should be a new one, because the old widget system is like limited in a bunch of weird ways. Like
it's so old now.
It's so old. There have always been layout problems with, like, when you expand a widget from the compact layout to the expanded one, some weird stuff always happens, and not the good weird, the bad weird. They do not support like keyboard input, for example, whereas I think it should really be a more flexible system. And also the UI that you can show in there is super limited. Should be a new one. You should have the option of choosing, like, is this, like, the idea of like widget and icon maybe is an old one. Maybe everything should become a new, more dynamic sort of thing. And I don't mean that I want like all my icons to move, like, flash different images all at once. But to have a more dynamic system for some things, I don't know, like an Apple Music widget, that would be beautiful. And yes, I'm fully aware that this is stuff that Android has done for a while. I just want the same, maybe a little more, done in an Apple fashion. That's what I'm asking for.
Android has been doing this for 10 years. 10 years we've been asking for it. 10 years. Come on, Apple.
Yes. Yes.
If you overdo it, though, your phone ends up looking like the Las Vegas Strip, right? Like there's.
See, I know you were gonna say that. I don't want that, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Moderation. Do everything in moderation. Mm-hmm.
Customize responsibly. Yes.
All right, as promised, we're going to wrap up with the Mac Madness stuff, talking about the winner, and I have made my picks. But before we get to that, let me tell you about our final sponsor. This episode of Connected is brought to you by Bowl and Branch, the folks who make the softest organic sheets and luxury bedding. If you're looking to add a little luxury to your life, then this is for you. My wife and I received a set of Bowl and Branch sheets, and it was a spectacular unboxing experience. But the bedding really is amazing. They are by far the nicest sheets we have. And when it's time to wash them and put something else on the bed, I feel a little sad. I want them there all the time.
I was going to say this. We washed ours recently, and I'm just like so disappointed at the sheets that we had before now. So I need to rectify that.
Yeah, be warned. They'll ruin your other sheets. Their products are made with uncompromised quality and attention to detail every step of the way. They're meticulously crafted from pure 100% organic long staple cotton. That means they will get softer over time. So, Myke, when they end up back on the bed, they'll be even better.
Oh, nice.
If you didn't know, Bowl and Branch really are the good guys when it comes to ethical manufacturing. All their factories prioritize workers' empowerment and sustainable incomes. 100% of their packaging is made from recycled paper, and they're the first manufacturer of linens to become fair trade certified. So give it a try. Shipping is always free. You can try them out for 30 nights risk-free. And right now, you'll get $50 off your first set of sheets at bowlandbranch.com with the promo code CONNECTED. Go there now, upgrade your bedding. You won't regret it. That's Bowl and Branch, B-O-L-L, bowlandbranch.com, promo code CONNECTED. Our thanks to Bowl and Branch for the support of the show and Relay FM.
Before we talk about the last topic, I have a quick request for Connected listeners. I want to understand why people love Notion so much.
Oh no, what are you doing to yourself? Have you heard the good news about Notion?
No, I have not.
You're going to hear it.
So here's my request. I want to know your interesting and weird in a good way and fun things in which you're using Notion. Like, I get the basic like note-taking stuff, and you can link multiple pages with each other, and you can have tables. Like, the basics I understand. I've played with Notion. I was not impressed by the fact that it was like a web app running on my iPhone or the iPad, but I see that they have a slightly better iPad version out today. So I want to check that out out again, but I also want to understand what are some of the most impressive like setups that people have in Notion, like some fascinating, even if it's like a super niche type of approach. I want to know about that. I want to hear from you. So let me know if you're using Notion in a fun, interesting, fascinating, weird, in a good way setup. I want to see that. I want to know about you. So let me know. That was my request. That was my official request.
You're going to get a lot of resources.
Mm-hmm.
See, resources are fine as long as they have actual examples I can study. I'm done, Steven. Yes, thank you.
Mac Madness.
Map.
So in the show notes in the chat room right now, I have an image that is my bracket, how I filled it out.
Which is our request to you.
Yes, it's pretty different from how it went down in the real world. But and it's probably not a surprise to anyone who follows my stuff, kind of how I would vote. But Myke, I believe you wanted to ask me about this, and I guess we could talk about the winner.
Well, I think we should start by talking about the winner,
Okay.
because and then we can actually talk about your picks, which is like a completely different thing.
Sure.
The winner was the Cube, so connected listeners came through.
Go Cube. Go
And they
Cube.
voted for the Cube. The Cube was the right winner out of the two. It just was. It was the most exciting, the most interesting.
Very close.
I know. What was the final?
It won with 51.3% of the votes.
Woo!
About half the time when I looked at the results as they were coming in, it was split dead 50-50.
Wow.
Like, it was wild.
Look, I think everyone can agree. This went in places that maybe it shouldn't have. I think everyone can decide themselves what they think about that, right? But of the two, I'm just happy to see that the Cube was the winner because, that laptop could have been any laptop. Who would know, right? It's just a MacBook Pro. But let's talk about yours. Let's talk about your bracket here. I don't know if we want to go through every...
No, that's a lot.
For everyone, it seems like a lot, but I do want to touch on some of these here, I think. We should maybe start with some heavy hitters. So the Mac Pros. So you had the Mac Pro 2019 go further than any other Pro Mac, right?
Yeah.
You took that all the way through to the quarterfinals.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Because I really do love this computer. I mean, it's the first Mac Pro I've owned, and it's like a return to really heavy-hitting Mac hardware from Apple, and I think that it's just fantastic.
Okay, we'll make sure that Steven's bracket is in the show notes if you want to follow along.
Yes.
One that we were hearing about a lot was the SE30.
Uh-huh.
You
Yeah.
had the SE30 go out in round 2 to the iMac G3.
Mm-hmm.
I think, again, you can see here why random seeding was terrible for that particular thing alone, right?
It's one that hurt from it. So I had it move on. I had it beat the Retina MacBook Pro that the audience put into the finals. So that's the biggest difference between my bracket and the public's, I think. The SE30 was a great machine, and it was the capstone to that early Macintosh period, right? And lots of people have written about that and talked about it. And for me, it does signify that. And, the Retina MacBook Pro from 12 to 15, like, it's a great computer, but this is favorite. And I think the SE30 kind of pulls on my heartstrings more than that MacBook Pro. But look, the iMac G3, I mean, it's a machine that I have spent so much time with. I did that big project with it. I traveled halfway across the country to give them to a museum, right? Like, I spent a lot of time with that, and that one was a clear finalist for me.
Which is probably a good place to mention that you had the iMac G3 go through to the final against the Titanium PowerBook G4, and you had the Titanium PowerBook G4 beat the iMac G3, which I can't believe that.
But the Titanium PowerBook's my favorite Mac of all time.
It's just a surprise to me, considering how much you have been through.
It was very close, and I thought a lot about it. The reason that the Titanium for me won out is that it was kind of my first Mac. I had a high school job. My boss gave me a Titanium to use as my own. It's the machine I took to college. It just, as much as I love the iMac G3, the Titanium was like my first Mac, and I've got it, and it's fantastic, and because it helped set me off on this course, right? That my love for that machine is what made all this so interesting to me, and that I just couldn't say no to.
The TAM, the 20th anniversary Mac.
Mm-hmm.
You had that beat the original Mac Mini, the Power Mac G5, but losing out to the clamshell iBook G3.
Yeah.
That's another surprise to me.
Yeah, the TAM didn't go very far. The clamshell iBook went pretty far in the public one. In fact, the clamshell iBook, the public and I got it to the same place, which is interesting.
It's one of the only things which is the same.
I love the 20th anniversary Mac, but the clamshell iBook is just way more fun because it's got a handle. It came in a bunch of different colors, and first, it's just more fun to me. I love my 20th anniversary Mac. I'm very fortunate to own one. Maybe fortunate's not the right word for most people, but I was very happy to obtain one a few years ago. But the clamshell iBook just inched it out for me because I think if I had to pick between the two, the clamshell is a lot more fun. And again, like favorite, sort of my love for these things, the clamshell iBook was one of the very first machines that I collected. The Cube and the clamshell were my first two Macs that I collected, and so it has a special place in my heart. Plus, you can get it in orange, which you can't argue with.
So, like the last one on this side of the bracket, left side of the bracket, the iMac Pro, you had lose to the 12-inch PowerBook G4.
Mm-hmm.
That's a surprise to me because before the Mac Pro, like I would hear you frequently say like the iMac Pro is like the best Mac you've ever owned, that kind of thing. And I know best and favorite are different, but like that's still a surprise to me because I know that you're a big iMac Pro fan.
I am a huge iMac Pro fan, and that one out of the first round I think was one of the hardest. I think I could have gone either way, but the PowerBook inched it out for me. I think because, including myself, like Apple's never really rekindled that magic. Like there's something really special about that machine, and like I have a couple of them, and anytime I open it, it's like this just makes me happy. The keyboard goes all the way to the edge. It's all very tight and tidy. There's something nice about it. Also, the chat room wants me to say orange again.
Yeah, you say it funny.
So I guess I've done that.
It's like it's one sound.
Orange.
Like orange.
You say it, Federico.
Orange.
Say it in Italian.
Arancia.
Oh, God, it's way better.
Oh, it's better. That was better. Yeah, we should all say it like that.
Yeah.
All right, I want to talk about your how you let the Cube run through to the quarterfinal.
Mm-hmm.
You had the Cube beat both good MacBook Airs, and I am surprised about that.
I know. I was shocked that. So while this was voting, I didn't want to comment on how I had voted. That was kind of one of my rules. But I was really surprised the public followed me in this because I didn't think that I thought the 13-inch Air was. I thought the 13-inch Air and the black MacBook were going to be in the semifinals in the public bracket. I was shocked that the Cube made it as far as it did. Winning. I didn't expect that. That was a surprise to me. But again, like going back to it was one of those first two machines for me. It's just it's such a fascinating machine because of the way it's designed, but the fact that it was a failure. And Apple used language that they put it on ice. They didn't cancel it. Like the whole thing is so weird and special. I just the Air is a better machine in every way, but the Cube again is more special to me.
Mm.
And, the public vindicated me because it won.
Now, look, I gave my love for the G4 Cube, but I would, and I don't think I did have the Cube make it out of round one.
Mm-hmm.
Because the 11-inch MacBook Air was like a very special computer for me.
Yeah.
Like, I loved that computer, like many other people did. I was just really surprised to see that you put the Cube that far through your own bracket. I don't think I have many more comments on the right-hand side of the bracket. I think most of the interesting debates were on the left side anyway. Mm-hmm. I don't really think that the right has got a lot in it for me, honestly.
Yeah, and that's totally fine. I mean, that's why this has been such an interesting project, because people approach it in such different ways, and honestly in ways that I didn't really expect. I kind of figured that people would sort of struggle with the best versus favorite. I kind of assumed that would be kind of a difficult thing to talk about and to get through. And I think it was. I think a lot of the arguments I saw on Twitter about it, which is fantastic, right? Like I love how into this people were. But I think that's really where a lot of the sort of differences come from. And the age you are and when you came to the Mac and what you think about the Mac all would influence your decisions on this, which I think is why the results are so fascinating.
You think you're going to do it again?
I think so. I don't think I'm going to do favorite Macs again, but I have some other some other ideas.
I would love to see a favorite iPhone.
I think that's what I will. I'm not committing to this, but I think that's what I will probably do next year.
Favorite iPhone would be nice. Favorite iPad would be also
Yeah.
fine. Favorite Apple TV would just be sad. Favorite Beats headphones would be fun, but you're too old.
Yeah.
Yeah, favorite iPhone should be the next one.
Yeah, I think that's what I want to do. And I would separate phone and iPad because, they're very different categories. So, but yeah, that's how I would have voted. I'll have a blog post up when the show goes up so you can see it. It's in the show notes as well, the image. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. And again, I'm totally blown away that I had 15,000 votes and people were really fired up about it. And I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, 2,000 of those votes were Federico for the cube.
I did make it where you couldn't vote again immediately. You said you'd at least have to go to like a private tab or something to do it. So I tried to limit cheating where I could.
Shortcuts.
Hacked my Google form with shortcuts.
With Base64.
That's what I did.
Worth it.
I think that's about it this week, guys. If you want to find show notes this week, things we spoke about, head on over to the website, relay.fm/connected/289. While you're there, you can send us an email with feedback or follow-up. While you're there, you can become a member and support the show directly, which we would appreciate. You can also find us on Twitter. You can find Myke there as IMYKE. Myke is the host of a bunch of other shows here on Relay FM. Go check those out. You can find Federico on Twitter at Viticci, VITICCI, and he's the editor-in-chief of MacStories.net. If you did not check out their iPad at 10 coverage, go find that. There's a link at the bottom of the article in the show notes where you can see the whole category. Lots of really great stuff there. I think you guys totally killed it. You can find me on Twitter as ISMH and my writing over at 512pixels.net. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Pingdom, Squarespace, and Bowl and Branch. Until next week, gentlemen, say goodbye.
Arrivederci.
Cheerio.
Adios.